The Pit Press Podcast.
Reinholz launches from downtown. No. Van Horn, no. And that's it. New Mexico wins it.
Kenny Thomas blocks. Gibson hustling down. He has some room. And he gets it.
Oh, long three. He got it.
Oh, my goodness.
Kendall Williams from 35 feet.
For the win. Snell. Got it. He got it. Wow. With 1.8 seconds remaining.
And New Mexico's going to dribble out the clock. The Lobos three-peat as conference tournament champions. Kendall Williams fires the ball into the air, but New Mexico wins it this afternoon 64-58 over San Diego State, and the Lobos claim the Mountain West Conference's automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. All right, before I preface how I sound on this episode, I apologize. I've been dealing with the flu, or well, not Montezuma's revenge, but they had a little bit of that in Spokane, Washington on Friday night. I've been dealing with the flu. I actually had somebody text me and say, "Hey, when is your next episode?" An acquaintance of mine who is a fan, which, you know, as I always joke, everybody hates me. So I apologize for the delay. We're also trying to get out a year in review, and we'll do that as quickly as I possibly can, but I would rather have that be good than quick. My name's Ryan Tamori. This is the Pit Press Podcast, and winding down 2023. I hope everybody's had a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year as we record this on New Year's Eve, which, you know, for continuity's sake, isn't the best. And I would say for the first time in my life, I'm happy to be sitting in the comfort of my own house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, than commuting into Midtown Manhattan on New Year's Eve, which I did twice. And I wasn't going to watch the ball drop. I was working. So this is I appreciate this year. As always, I'm joined by my business partner and co-founder in this endeavor, Mr. Erik Malton. Senor, how are you?
I'm good, Ryan. What's up, guys? Good morning. We're approaching conference season. Now the fun begins, man. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty excited, especially when you see the slate yesterday with college basketball. When you're a degenerate gambler like I am, and you see all the conference play, it was a really weird matchup between West Virginia and Ohio State last night on Fox. And then played in Cleveland. And as always, I am joined by a Lobo fan since 1970, the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, and a Cowboy fan since 1970, and a Lakers fan since I always get those wrong. But anyway, Ed, hey, Ed, it's been like 2 weeks since we've done this, so I'm happy to be back. Happy New Year. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great. You know, looking forward to talking Lobo hoops, and good to be on with you guys.
And we're joined by a special guest today. No Nick Nunez, no spawn of Ed Nunez. No Richard Thompson from the Bay Don't Play from the Bay Area. Jacob Neff is sitting this one out. Very special to have this gentleman on. And as I always joke, didn't do my journalistic due diligence here again, and I've apologized to him, and I've appreciated his patience this morning. Mackenzie Bishop from Abrazo Homes. He's also a big supporter of 505 Sports Venture Foundation with our friend Drew Herrig, and then also Kurt Roth. Mackenzie, I know that you're a super, you're a supporter. I'm going to let you explain it, but very briefly, just a little bit about Abrazo Homes, what you do, and then I know you're a UNM alumni, so just please introduce yourself to our listenership.
Sure. Great to be here, guys. Honored and humbled for you to have me on. Love talking Lobo hoops as much as I possibly can. I'm Mackenzie. My business partner and I, Brian McCarthy, we started our home building company in 2010 at the depths of the housing recession. We were either going to go broke or go for broke. So we chose the latter and started our company. And fast forward to today, and we're top 5 or 6 builder in the Albuquerque area. I think this year we'll build about 170, 180 houses. We have 35, 40 employees, depending on time of the year. So really excited. Love our team. You know, it's a pleasure to go to work every single day. And I think we do some pretty cool stuff. So that's enough about Abrazo. Can't wait to talk about Lobo Hoops. But yeah, thanks again for having me.
I'll ask this first. How did your relationship with Kurt Ross start? And I mean, how did you meet him, and how your involvement with 505 Sports Venture Foundation?
You know, so Kurt and I we've known of each other and about each other for a long time, just being around the Lobo program. But I would say we were both on the charter flight with the Lobos last year on New Year's Eve when we played Wyoming. Pardon me, Ryan. I got the same thing. Getting over the same thing you're getting over. But we were on the charter.
You have all the sympathy in the world. Trust me.
Yeah. Fortunately, I'm not coughing anymore. Just clearing my throat all the time. But we were on the charter flight a year ago today to the Wyoming game that we pulled off right at the end. Spent a lot of time, got to know Kurt and a lot of the folks around 505, and just decided and dove in and, you know, thought that this is changing the game. And he and I talked a lot about the dynamics going on in college sports. And I'm definitely on board with the way things are moving. And so I joined his board, also joined the Lobo Club board. So I had this very unique insight into both sides and get to bridge that divide, which has been an interesting dynamic to navigate the last probably 6-8 months. But there's been a lot of growth and a lot of evolution going on in that relationship over especially the last probably 60 days. And it's really exciting. I think we have a real opportunity as a university to compete at a level that we haven't been able to via traditional means. And I think the future is very bright.
No, that's awesome to hear. And you sounded super excited to talk about Lobo Hoops. So we'll treat this as a traditional show. And then I think maybe at the end of it, I'll just get your thoughts on, you know, what Bronco Mendenhall might mean to this community and moving forward. It's also a different voice. I'm happy to have you on, and we appreciate you joining us. I'll get started with, you know, I'm very critical, and I have a friend who, and Mackenzie, forgive me, especially if you listen to us, I'm the naysayer on this podcast. I'm the glass half empty kind of guy. And that's probably the New Jersey roots. You know, I looked at the schedule, and from somebody who loves Big West Coast Conference, these smaller conferences, the West Coast Conference, did I say that already? West Coast Conference, Big West, the WAC. I enjoy watching these smaller conferences. So for UNM to play perennial, probably, you know, teams that are going to be in the tournament with maybe UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara, you know, St. Mary's, that game feels like a long time ago. You know, when I saw the schedule released in October or September, and I saw Eastern New Mexico, I thought that it would probably be an exhibition, I don't know how they would do it. I looked at it, I was like, well, that's got to be an exhibition game, and I know better. And somebody had told me, you know, hey, it's a tune-up before the Iron Bowl, and you know, that analogy. And I looked at that, and I thought that was a pretty good analogy. But to close out non-conference play, UNM beat Eastern New Mexico 87-54 on the pit Friday night. The first 7 to 8 minutes of what I saw, and I wanted to gouge my eyes out because I had two TVs in front of me, one with the Cotton Bowl on, and then the other with this game on. And it was quite painful after a pretty good bowl season, especially Friday morning with the Gator Bowl, Kentucky and Clemson. I mean, you look at the final score, and UNM did what they were supposed to do. MASH returned. The big news: Donovan Dent and True Washington were out. True Washington was out with the flu, so again, he has my sympathy. Nelly Jr. Joseph with 13 points, 16 rebounds, 15 rebounds in the first half. I did not know that. Isaac Mushila, somebody else who's we've been super high since he's come back from his hand injury. And hey, I didn't realize this, Amzil in double figures again. I've paid very close attention to every game, but really this one, given that I felt sick. But you look at the final score, and they did what they were supposed to do. From what I saw at the beginning of the game,
Jalen House wasn't shooting the ball so well. I get it out of the way now. I know it's simple and I sound cliche. Erik, I'm going to throw it to you because you were there, and Mackenzie, you were there. So Erik, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts about how, and there is a positive, and as Erik will bring up to me, the Bill Parcells School of Coaching or School of Record. You are what your record is. This is 12-1. And I saw a post that the Mountain West had the other day, and we'll have to talk about Gonzaga, San Diego State going up to Spokane and getting a win in the Kennel. You are what your record is. Hey, this team's 12-1. That's pretty darn good. But Erik, just your thoughts on the game.
I thought going into the game, it was going to be treated as a tune-up game, right? You're going to expect to see Mashburn returning and seeing a lot of minutes, just kind of getting reacclimated to the flow and pace of the game. But yeah, just right out of the gate, you could tell that they were definitely struggling. Not a whole lot of ball movement, a lot of one pass early possessions. House and Mashburn both were not shooting at a high clip, which was kind of expected from Mash, right? I didn't expect him to come out guns blazing right away, but you could definitely tell that they struggled just with the rhythm and pace. And I think House ended up with 22 points, 5 assists, no turnovers, which is definitely a positive. So I wasn't looking or trying not to look too much into it. I know they were treating it as like a tune-up game, but not seeing Dent out there, seeing what that rhythm looked like. Definitely a different dynamic when he's out there because he's the primary ball distributor. But got a big game from Nelly. He has a lot of intangibles. Amzo, was good to see him in double figures again. And then Applehans being able to come out there and knock down some shots. I think coming into conference play, that guy's gonna get a few positions, get a few possessions and some important minutes, and might be able to knock down a shot or two that might bode well for the Lobos down the stretch. But that was just my kind of initial impression. I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of this game, but it was nice to see them do the damage they did.
Mackenzie, I'll go to you. Just your thought. I mean, you're at every game. Just your thoughts about the win over Eastern New Mexico. And I think while I've got it, you can answer that portion, and then what you've seen from this team in non-con since they opened up against Texas Southern back at the beginning of November.
Well, I'll dovetail a little bit with what Erik's saying and talked about, and without talking about stats. Going into the game, assuming Dent was going to play, I really saw it as an opportunity from a team chemistry and continuity standpoint as a get-right game. When I heard pregame that Donovan wasn't going to play and that True was out, those are two guys that are huge rotation guys for us. They play a lot of minutes. They're very involved in what we're trying to do, both offensively, but especially defensively. I think the goal probably changed with that game. So instead of a team get-right game, I really kind of saw that it really evolved into an individual get-right game. So, aside from being kind of difficult to watch at times, especially those first 10, 12 minutes, as you mentioned, it was great to see individual guys kind of get going. I know Mash put up 18 shots, which there's not going to be that many shots to take in the Mountain West. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that, especially with Colorado State. We're averaging 73 possessions, I think, per game. If you think about how those are going to get used up, we can't be having Mash take 18 shots, but in a game where it's really more about getting him back in the flow and getting in a rhythm. And I think he started to find that as the game went on. It was great in that regard. You guys talked about Mustafa actually swooshing a three. The first three he made, I think it hit every part of the rim 6 times to go in, but it was good to see him shoot confidently and in rhythm from outside because we're going to need him in a couple of these games to stretch the floor and make some of those shots. Braden, for sure. I love watching Braden play in practice. It's crazy to see how confident he is in practice shooting and how much the guys try to get him looks. And then in games, I think, lack of playing time or what it is, I think he just is a little bit nervous, but the kid can really shoot it. He's a gifted offensive player. And I think there's going to be a game or two where he and/or Jamarl are hitting threes for us that really matter and move the needle and may be the difference in the game. So I think in that regard, Nelly 15 rebounds at halftime. I didn't know that stat either. I heard that from Chuck Grammer. I was like, that's incredible. And I think he's really starting to find his own, disrupting ball screens on defense, and really cleaning up the glass, disrupting shots, and then chipping in, some gimmies. We got to figure out his back to the basket game and try to get him 2 to 3 good looks. It just to keep defenses honest and off balance. But in terms of the Eastern game, I would have liked to seen them win by a little bit more, but I think, by the 10-minute mark of the second half, the rotations were off and guys were unlacing their shoes. And, it was just one of those games where I think it was great individually for guys to get right.
And just your thoughts about, non-con in general. I mean, I'm still along the lines of that they really haven't played anybody, but 12-1, man, you can metaphorically punch me in Lobo Gabe can punch me in the face. But that's a Twitter guy. Sorry about that bad reference there. But just your thought. I mean, at times they have looked, like a juggernaut. Just your thoughts on non-con overall.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of games of the year were, I'll be honest with you, very difficult to watch, and I was very concerned about how we would measure up because the ball gives energy to people, and when the ball's not moving, it affects defensive effort, it affects rebounding, and we just weren't moving the ball very well, and it was affecting our defensive effort and our defensive efficiency. And so when that started to change and we really bought into moving the ball and sharing the ball, it seemed like this team just kind of came alive, and guys just started stepping up. Level of energy came around. I think House getting healthy has really contributed to the overall energy of the team. So while the schedule isn't as strong as we'd like, it's the Lobos. We have to load up home games to pay the bills, and a lot of people won't come to the pit. So it is what it is. And until we can get into some of these exempt tournaments that we've had historically, that Neil kind of screwed for us, because we had, I think, a 4 or 5 year contract with ESPN where we got into some really great exempt tournaments, and I think we lost every single one of them. So we got to earn our way back into those, and I think going forward that's going to be huge for us to get really good non-conference competition. But all that being said, I think there have been Lobo teams in the past that have played a schedule like this and haven't looked like this, and I think especially defensively, to see what they're doing, how they're disrupting, full court pressure consistently, not giving up a lot of easy buckets, taking care of the basketball despite playing, I think they're the 12th or 13th fastest paced team in the nation, and they're consistently single-digit turnovers. I mean, those aren't usually things you see even against poor competition or, less than, exemplary competition. So I don't know. I would just say if you look further than who they're playing and what the scores are, and if you look a little deeper and if you've played basketball or know the game well, they're fun to watch. It's going to be a real test to see what happens when they play teams that they are trying to exert their will just as effectively as the Lobos are.
That was a good answer. I appreciate that. And I don't think something that we've pounded home is regardless whether it's a new slate of players, they beat, sound like a pilot there. They beat New Mexico State twice, and everything that's transpired over the year, I will say that I think that's benefited them. Ed, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw it to you. Hey, and I'll start with Amzil. And Mackenzie, I wanted to tell you something. And if you've listened to us, I think Jamal Baker Jr. is the X factor for this team. But and it was nice. Yeah, and to see Braden Applehands 4 of 6 from 3 with 14 points and 5 of 8 from the field. I don't care who you are. That's like who you're playing against. That's awesome to see. All right, Ed, here's Amzil's stat line: 13, almost 14 minutes, 4 of 6, 1 of 2 from 3, which he swooshed. I didn't see that. 2 of 3 from the free throw line. You have constantly said it on this podcast, just seeing the ball go into the net. What are your thoughts on that line?
That helps. Any shooter, like I said, I used to be able to shoot long distance back in the day. And anytime you see the shot go through, we mentioned shooting is balance, squaring the shoulders, release. There's so many follow through. There's so many things, and he's getting shots up in practice. They brought him in to be a shooter, so that he's getting the shots up, and seeing that ball go through in 2 back-to-back games with double figures will only help his confidence, shooting with confidence. And it's a non-conference game, as Mackenzie and Erik and Ryan, you mentioned. Eastern's not a bad team. Now, they're good for Division II. And you mentioned, Mackenzie, a get-right game. A couple of things. Now, Jamal Mashburn, you mentioned 73 possessions. He's rusty. He's 6 of 18 from the field. He's a little bit rusty. That guy's going to put him up, man. He's going to put him up, and that's the way it is. I mean, I don't see anybody saying, hey, and he's going to make a mid-range mash. That's what we call him, right? He's going to make those shots, but there's some shots, and we've alluded to this, that he takes that are me shots. I got to get mine shots. I've seen it. So I was hoping that they could all play together. If you remember, Mash and Jalen House had only played 15 minutes together. So it's good to see them back together and to give House credit. Another 20-point game, no turnovers, second game in a row. That's huge. But I think, and you mentioned Nelly. Nelly, Coach Patino said this. Sometimes the game's got to slow down. We've got to be able to throw it in there and get a point, get points in the post. Last year they did it with Udeze. Udeze wasn't technically sound as far as footwork or a jump hook or turn and face or something down low in the post, but he overpowered people. He was a bull. They were able to slow the game down, and I think that's good with Nelly. So, a good game going forward. I think, again, those are Jamal Baker. You mentioned him, Mackenzie. He's Jeff Grammer said this. He had 5 assists. They didn't bring him in to be a facilitator. They brought him in to be a shooter. And some of the times I've seen him, though, they're catching him in the shooting pocket. He's just got to shoot. Then he'll dribble, and the shot is gone. So he's got to be able to catch and shoot. Apple Hands, you mentioned him, Ryan. He's a catch and shoot guy, in rhythm guy, shooting with confidence guy. He's a problem defensively. They isolate him. He's slow. He's not able to guard people when the floor opens up. That's the problem. You can put him in certain situations. You can't have him out there long. He's not quick enough. He's not fleet of foot to stay there on the floor and guard faster players. Good point, Mackenzie, when you mentioned somebody's going to impose their will on New Mexico as New Mexico has imposed their will on other teams. That starts Tuesday. We'll see how they react. And one more thing, Ryan, you mentioned about the non-con 12-1. You are who your record is. Remember, that loss to St. Mary's still looms large. Their non-conference schedule is not that strong. I'm impressed. I love it. I'm glad they're winning, but they're going to have to either win all out in the conference because that loss to St. Mary's will loom large later on down the way.
I was going to ask you a question about Nelly Jr. Joseph, but now that you brought that up, and I'll get into this later before we hit on CSU. Lenardi has them in the tournament as the last 4 in, and I think last 4 without a bye. There would be part of me, and it's personal, maybe that they're the last 4 in because I get to go see a game at Dayton. That would be something I would want to do. That's just personal. I'd probably rather see them get the bye. But Lenardi and Fox, and just the national, and I've got friends that went to Big East schools and they think John Fanta is a clown. But you're getting, and I'm not talking ill of John Fanta. I think he's great. But when you have national guys giving recognition, John Fanta wrote that they were the top 3 team he took 10 teams, and UNM was number 3 on teams that weren't in the top 25. So essentially you're 28th in the country. And what I wanted to hit on really quickly, we'll do that before we go we talk about Colorado State. Ed, just your thoughts on Nelly Jr. Joseph. I enjoy talking to you always about the big. Every time I bring up a big guy, I just think about Charles Oakley talking to you. But he dominated with 15 in the first half. I mean, that rebounds, that's impressive. He played 22 minutes, 13 total points, 16 total rebounds. Just your thought on that game.
You know what? That's anytime you're in double-digit rebounds, and we say that. I've said this a million times. I don't want to belabor the point. It doesn't do us any good to be big unless we play big. That's my problem with Sebastian Forsling sometimes. He comes in, he's 7 feet, he doesn't play big. I'm that kind of, he's a coach. My thing was, hey, if a big guy's not playing big, that doesn't help us. So I think he's not the crafty guy underneath as far as the footwork. He can score underneath. He doesn't have a lot of tools in his post tool bag, but he's got some athleticism, more of a rim runner, can run the floor. Mackenzie made a great point about his defense, disrupting the pick and roll, hedge and get back. He's done a great job of that. Long arms, got his hands out in the passing lanes. He's been very effective in that. I still think he's still finding his way. I don't think we've seen the best of Nelly, not yet. And I think that's coming around the corner. That's a good sign against, and you mentioned, Mackenzie, a get-right game, right? Everybody sees this game on the schedule. I know it, believe me. They see, I'm going to get mine. They do say that. Believe me, they do. So I think that was a good game for him. I still think the best is yet to come with Nelly Jr. Joseph. I really do.
Does anybody have a rebuttal for that? Because I kind of agree with that.
No, I agree.
I won't. Yeah, go ahead.
Go
Eric.
ahead. No, I'm gonna touch on Nelly a little bit. He had 4 steals this game, and I can't remember if it was like the UC Irvine game, but he had 5 steals in that one. And Mackenzie touched on it earlier with just his approach on the defensive side and being able to blow up all these ball screens. He's super elusive and good with hand-eye coordination and being able to knock the ball loose and steal the ball. Like, I can't think of any other big in the country that's able to do that. And I think we're just kind of scratching the surface in his whole package and how he's impacting the game on the defensive side.
Yeah, I think he maybe more than anybody really needed that 2 full months of practice before the season started to be where he wants to be when the season started. When he got here, you could just tell he did not have his legs under him, and it's taken him 2 months to get his legs under him. And what you start to see now is just that lateral quickness. But what's fun to watch, especially I'm fortunate enough to sit very close, and I get to see kind of off the ball action, what's going on, and he has an unbelievable knack to know where to be and how to get position for defensive rebounds. I mean, he just is always in the right place at the right time. And I think now that he's got his legs under him, he's getting where he wants to be. And then, you can't teach 6'11" and that huge frame. So, if he's in position and boxing out, he's going to clean up a lot of rebounds in the glass. And we're going to need that because I know rebounding was a big concern coming in. And I think we've been really fortunate to have someone as good as JT aside from him kind of fill in, because I think everybody is concerned about rebounding with Mustafa as the starting 4, but with JT's emergence, we've really dodged a bullet. So we just got to keep him out of foul trouble.
I don't think you will find anywhere else in the country where I don't know, I could be wrong, where we're talking about very few, far and few. How's that we're talking about a win over a D2 school. There was a brief second in my mind because I was starting to feel better Friday, and I was like, these guys better not lose tonight because we would have to do something immediately on Saturday. So I'm glad they ended up winning, by 33. The history degree in journalism math there going. What I wanted to hit on, and we will start our conference preview. We'll start our first conference game, Mountain West Conference game preview. I think we were going to try to do a whole preview. We might be able to do that this week. Which now I'm finally very excited to talk about. This is a conference. The Mountain West Conference has 4 teams with 1 loss, 5 with 2. Nevada's 13-1, Colorado State's 12-1, New Mexico's 12-1, Utah State, Danny Sprinkle 12-1, San Diego State 11-2. They are riding high off a win at Gonzaga. And Ryan, my name's Ryan, Kevin Little from the Colorado, and he covers Colorado State athletics for the newspaper in Fort Collins. He's going to join us later in the podcast. I didn't mention that at the beginning. I've spoken to him in the past. He's great to talk to. Give us a little bit more on insight. Bottom line is UNM goes to number 15. That could change tomorrow. Number 15, Colorado State. On Tuesday, it is a 8:00 tip. 8:30 tip on FS1, and now we're getting to national television. And this is something I did not know, and Eric brought it to my attention maybe about a week ago. When UNM hosts San Diego State on January 13th, it's a Saturday. That is an 11 a.m. 1 Eastern Standard Time tip-off on the big boy on CBS. That's not CBS Sports Network. That is not Fox Sports 1. That's not ESPN Plus. That's not the Mountain. That's CBS. That's a big deal. I didn't realize that until about a week ago. I know we're jumping the gun. So I did great exposure for the conference. And there's many, several things I wanted to hit on. But again, you have 5 teams. Man, four with 1 loss. UNM's one of them. Colorado State should probably be 13-0. They had a bad night against St. Mary's. This matchup is right now KenPom number 35 versus KenPom number 29. You can't I don't you can't get much better than that. And it's you throw Florida Atlantic at 21 and nobody knows who the hell they are. I mean, they beat Arizona, then they lose to Florida Gulf. They lose to the artist formerly known as Dunk City. Eric, this is what you sent me previewing Colorado State, and I'd agree with you. By far the toughest opponent UNM has faced thus far. I don't know how they're going to slow down this Colorado State offense. And the one person we have to talk to right off the bat is Isaiah Stevens. He was preseason Mountain West Conference Player of the Year. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's probably borderline a first-round draft pick in the NBA late, if not a second-round draft pick. He's the real deal. I think he's an NBA player. He's David Roddy 2 years ago, they were in the big dance. They had a big lead against Michigan, and then Michigan rolled them in the second half. And Nico Medved is a great coach. I don't, I will just say my piece first, and then I'll get to the guard in Erik. If UNM can go up there and get a win and mark a stamp right away in conference play, I think that expectations are going to be through the roof for the remainder of January and February. And those months are long. Those are long. I think about it like the calendar year of 2023 flew by. But now that I look about it from somebody that observed, and when we started this podcast, that observed what UNM men's basketball became and the last undefeated team in the country last year, it felt like March and January and February just were like a train starting to chug its, starting to maneuver forward on the tracks. But this is, I'm sure when they released the schedule, they saw this and didn't think, this might be something. This is a great way, not only for Colorado State to kick off the season, not only a great game for New Mexico to kick off the conference season. I think when you look at it, and I haven't looked at everything else, but at the entire schedule, but when you look at what the Mountain West Conference wants to start, how they want to start this conference season, this is the game. And I don't think they probably anticipated those at the headquarters. I think what's in Denver, that they anticipated this matchup in October, whenever they release the schedule. I think it's great. This is a task, and I think we are going to learn a lot more about UNM than what we already know. That's a cliche answer, but Erik, I'm going to throw this over to you. What you know about Isaiah Stevens, what you know about this Colorado State team. And I know, then Javante Johnson's up there, but he's a Colorado Springs kid. Just your overall thoughts on Isaiah Stevens.
Legit pro prospect. It reminds me a lot of Chris Paul when Chris Paul was in college, because he's got a really good mid-range game, but he's an elite passer. And by elite passer, I mean he ranks 7th in the country in assist rate. I think he's averaging 16 plus points a game, above 6 assists a game. Him and Donovan Dent are kind of in that same category. They're the only 2 point guards in the whole country that average 16 and 6 and a little bit more. But Isaiah Stevens is a little bit more seasoned. He's considered a veteran and a leader of that team. He's been there. He's been in big games, and he continues to deliver in big games. I think he's this season starting to get more of that national notoriety and recognition. And this team goes as he goes. But I don't want it to be understated that he's carrying this team on his back, because he's really not. I mean, he's kind of leading the way, but this team is loaded, and they're loaded with some transfers. Some guys I want to touch on, like Neat Clifford. He is in the running for Mountain West Newcomer of the Year. The transfer, 6'6" transfer. He's from Colorado Springs, but played at Colorado. He's a big-time impact player. He's a 6'6" stretch who can shoot from the outside, but he also has a really good mid-range game and can take it to the rack. Josiah Strong is another guy that I want to revert to. He's, I think, still injured, but him and Jalen Lake are kind of their 2 primary defenders on the ring. They're both 6'4". This team is extremely efficient on the offensive side. I think they're one of the top 10 teams in the country in overall team assist rate. So they're extremely patient, move the ball around really well, share the wealth. something that the Lobos haven't really had to face yet. Maybe with St. Mary's a little bit, but polar opposites in the sense that they like to share the ball. Assists are there. I think they average just under 1 assist per possession or per bucket that they get, where the Lobos on the other end create a lot of their shots. Like Ed had talked about Mashburn, about him dribble pull up, right? Like this team doesn't do that. They share the ball and they get an assist on just about every basket. So they're going to have to bring that team defensive mindset to this game, defend the weak side, help on some of those hedges, on some of those screens. Definitely going to be the toughest test for the Lobos as far as stopping this juggernaut of an offense that Colorado State is.
Individually, Isaiah Stevens is tied for third with 7.3 assists a game. And I know that they have Patrick Cartier, the forward. Last season, he averaged 12 points a game, 3 rebounds a game. He's a big force in the middle. Mackenzie, I'll throw it to you. What do you know about Colorado State? And maybe the significance of this matchup, and maybe you can, if you agree to disagree with me. I think just the statement of this game in the Mountain West Conference, not only significant for the conference, but UNM and CSU.
Well, I think to echo your point, what an incredible way to kick off Mountain West play. I think these are two of the most fun offensive teams to watch play against each other. Very different styles. When you look at Colorado State and at a high level look at their KenPom stuff, but even when you dive a little deeper, the word you look at is just efficient. You know, they're squeezing a lot of points out of, you know, every single possession. And I think for the Lobos, you know, you said, how do we slow them down? And I would say, honestly, the way we win this game is to speed them up. They're wanting to have the game be under 70 possessions. They're wanting to, you know, have a high 3-point rate. And as Erik mentioned, you know, assist on most of them. I think the more we can get this game in transition and let our guards shine where they shine and speed them up where they're not able to go, you know, we're not playing against their set offense. I think that's going to bode incredibly well for us. So keep them off the free throw line, make them work for everything, you know, get them to take a lot more 2-point field goals than 3-point field goals than they're used to. And I think all of that really comes from having a game that's more in transition. So, you know, can we get out and run? Can we speed them up and get the game, you know, over 72 possessions? I think is going to be huge. But just on the whole, what an incredible advertisement for Mountain West basketball to have this as the first game out of the year. And, you know, if you start looking at the schedule and what the Lobos need to do to, you know, to be 12-6 or 13-3 or wherever we think they need to be to win this thing, 13-5, not 13-3. When you start looking at it, this is not a game that they necessarily have to win, but I do think it's a game that we really want them to play well because, you know, there's so much that will come out of this game, and, you know, with Mash coming back and how that dynamic's going to be, you know, I'll be honest, I'm not super optimistic about it, but, you know, I don't bet on the Lobos. So.
Oh, if you ever do bet on the Lobos, take the over. Ed, your thoughts heading into this game?
You know, I think, Erik, you make really good points about styles as far as the way Colorado State shares the ball. Stevens, if you remember last year when they played here in Albuquerque, Coach Pitino had challenged Mashburn about Stevens, and House went out there and did a pretty good defensive job on him because Coach Pitino was saying, hey, this guy's better, you know, kind of saying, poking him a little bit. He's better than you. He's going to be in the NBA. And Jalen House responded last year. But, you know, Erik, you mentioned he's an efficient passer as well. So you got to be careful about sending any double teams at him. You have to stay disciplined defensively. That's a real key. This is a very good team, and Coach Medved's a very good coach. And you mentioned styles are different. So it's a big test. It really is for New Mexico on the road. Even if you win, let's say you win, yes, expectations are through the roof. The conference, as we all know, is a grind. It's not over because if they win, it's going to be a very tough. Mackenzie, you mentioned that, man. That's a tough matchup. Moby's not an easy place to win. But even if you do win, you can't be like, well, man, you got Boise State, Utah State, San Diego State. That's just one game. The conferences we all know, and Wyoming, man, going down to Wyoming, that's always tough. The conference is a grind. This game is a grind. The matchups you mentioned, Eric, you put it really, really well. This is going to be two different styles of teams. So, and I think the thing that concerns me, how they get their points as opposed to how New Mexico gets theirs. We know Mash is going to get his. Mash is going to be Mash. We get the good house sometimes and the erratic house. Last two games, we've gotten the good house. So those things are real key. And the availability of Donovan Dent, we don't know. He's got a bruised quad. Is he going to even be in the lineup? Drew Washington, is he going to be in the lineup? Those are key things. They really are. So it's going to be a tough challenge. Me being the eternal optimist, of course, I'm going to say New Mexico is going to win, but don't listen to me. I always say that about all my teams. But I'm going to be watching intently, that's for sure.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to what Ed said, but then really what Mackenzie was talking about earlier too, was how is UNM going to get their points, right? And I think they get their points by being patient and by not settling for the first shot that they see. And that's typically what we get with Mashburn, right? Like even in the Eastern game, I know it was him trying to get back into rhythm, but a lot of those possessions were one pass shot up, or Mashburn dribble shoot. With against a team like Colorado State, who moves the ball well, who's extremely patient and really efficient, the Lobos have to almost play that same style of game. They have to be patient with their offensive possessions and make sure that they get points out of it. Because if they're just going in there one pass shot and we start falling behind, then that's going to start to kind of increase the pressure, and they're going to start forcing a lot of shots. Like this is a game they can't force a lot of shots. They gotta be patient. They gotta go inside out. They gotta look for the best available shot and knock them down when they have them open, right? Because those 4 shots or those shots early in the shot clock, when you come up empty, those are empty possessions. And that plays right into what Colorado State does best. They're going to rebound the ball. They're going to get into their offensive set. They're going to be patient, and then they're going to get a bucket out of it. So UNM's definitely got to value each possession and make sure that they're taking the best available shot within the offense.
We all, Mackenzie doesn't know this, but the two that always join me, Ed and Eric, know how I love history. And I don't think until the day I die, and it's, 11 years ago, anytime UNM goes up to Moby, I have to think about February 23rd, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And the box and the line, 12 of 16 field goals, 10 of 13 from 3. 12 of 17 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 46 effing points. That was Kendall Williams' line in 2013 when UNM beat Colorado State when they were ranked 22nd in the country. And they had a big center forward, Colton Iverson, who I think he was drafted. They went up there, and Mackenzie, forgive me, I know if you listen, but you've never dealt with me on here. I remember 10 years ago going up there, I was like, man, what, I don't know what they're going to do. And, they'll probably lose. And that was just another statement other than in March of the Alford years where, and Ed and I talk about it all the time. And Ed always mentions, 30-5 seasons just don't grow on trees. Money doesn't grow on trees. And I will never forget that performance because, man, Kendall, we talk about a lot of Lobos on this podcast, and I don't know why, and it shouldn't be the case when I feel like we don't mention Kendall enough, and Kendall was damn good. I mean, I always think about 2011 when Kendall in the second round of the Mountain West, the semifinals of the Mountain West Conference tournament. I mean, Jimmer went off, but for a while there, Kendall was back and forth with Jimmer. Kendall was a gamer, man. He's we need to start getting those guys on this podcast, but and we need to start with Darius Gary because we've been in contact with him. But just talking about that game, I don't know. Every time UNM goes up to CSU, regardless of what the record is for the last now 11 years, I think about that game, and I'll just throw that to you, Mackenzie. Is there any do you have any record? I will start with this because I remember where I was during that game. I was with a couple of friends at the Buffalo Wild Wings on the east side. It was like, we're trying to find a place to watch the game, and the place was packed. on Montgomery, and man, I just him hitting shot after shot after shot after shot. That's up there with, man, what, regardless of what sports, that's up there with one of the best performances in Lobo history. But just a recollection of that game.
Yeah, I remember watching it on TV, and as you said, those Alford years, they would go on the road and they would beat teams on the road that did not expect to lose. I remember the BYU game with Hobson, and that performance. I think one of the reasons Kendall, who's, like you said, an unbelievable gamer and a big shot maker, the reason he doesn't get as much notoriety is because he played on a team with a couple pros, with 3 different pros. And I think that team was just that group that Alford put together, and that first Neal year was just so loaded at every single position that I think sometimes that overshadows Kendall. But when you needed a big shot in a big moment, I mean, that guy he wanted the ball, and he very frequently would make it. One of my favorite all-time Lobos for sure. Just an unbelievable gamer, and you just see moxie like that every once in probably 10 years come through this place. I feel like Donovan kind of has that same kind of moxie. Not quite the outside shot that Kendall had, but that desire to make that winning shot. I mean, he's obviously had 2 coast-to-coast winning layups already this year, and I expect him to have a couple more game winners as the year goes on. But Kendall's one of my all-time favorites in that game. I think everybody will remember that game forever.
Ed, I'm going to throw that to you. What do you remember about that game?
That I was with a group of Highland friends. We were all at Sadie's, and I remember that game like it was yesterday. It was about 6 of us, and we were all celebrating. One of the things, I saw him make fadeaways, jump shots, drives to the basket. He was in a zone, and when shooters and scorers get in a zone like that, they cannot be stopped. And it's an incredible performance. You got to remember, I'm old. You mentioned that. I'm old. I've been a Lobo fan since 1970. Marvin Johnson scored 50 in the pit, and I was there against Colorado State. Ironically, it's a high for the pit, 50 points. I saw Kenny Page score 40 points against Arizona State in 1981. So that performance by Kendall was as good as any performance by any Lobo ever. And once he started playing downhill, there was no stopping him. Incredible. And the guy, I thought he was we interviewed him on the sports desk years ago, and I thought the guy is very humble. I thought enjoyable to talk to. Enjoyed playing the game. A little bit of a chip on his shoulder, like Mackenzie said, wanted the ball in his hands. But that performance that day, incredible. Just could not be stopped.
I rarely say this because when I compare things, I don't usually think of Kobe. I'm not a Kobe fan. I've never been. Again, I'm not making light of what happened to him. I look back, and part of me wishes that maybe he could have played LeBron in the finals and kicked his ass. But that was a Kobe-esque performance. Like, I wouldn't say a Michael. That was just like Kobe, that was Kobe in the Garden overshadowing the NFL Conference Championships. Erik, to you, just your thoughts on that game. I don't know why I brought that up, but that as somebody who's covered the team from here, I don't think we talk about that performance enough. That's up there for me.
No, yeah, Kendall was in his bag that game. He definitely brought his swag, and you could just tell with how he was playing that game. He was not really wishing the balls in, right? Like, there was just one of those games that you had this feeling that every time he touched the ball, he was going to do something with it. And Colorado State knew that too. Like, I remember seeing some of the players either on the bench or the coach at the time had this look on their face, like kind of threw their arms up in air. Like, I don't know what else to do to try to stop this guy. Like, when they're just falling like that, there's not much you can do to stop a guy like that. And Kendall was definitely one of the most confident players I remember ever donning a UNM Lobo jersey. And he played with this style, and it was like this fire within him. And he always wanted to shoot that shot, and he always wanted the balls in his hands. So, yeah, definitely one of those games where he brought his bag and he came with a whole lot of swag to it. So, I remember watching that game back in the day. I was in college with some friends, and we were all kind of just celebrating each shot that was going in, when each shot was almost like a prayer. But I think Kendall was the only one in the gym that knew it was going in.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. Before we wrap it up, do we want to do, even though it's snake of the episode? Well, we haven't done this in like 2 weeks. Do we want to do a snake of the
of the week.
We got to do it, man. We got to do
all
it.
right. Here he is.
And this is the snake of the week, bro.
It still gets better every time. I've said it on this podcast, and since Mackenzie's here, when we asked him to do that, I was like, I bet he's going to say it like this, and that's.
And this is the snake of the week, bro.
Yeah, that's it. Chef's
Yeah.
kiss.
For context, for Mackenzie, since he's new, we have a new segment, right? We're calling it the snake of the game, and it's kind of like your highest performer, the guy you want to highlight, every week. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a UNM player; it could be something kind of within the sports market or industry. But we've always kind of selected a UNM player.
I'm going to start with my snake of the week. It was the refs last night in that football game. Ed, your snake of the week.
Well, on that note, I'm going to go with
that's coming from the Giants fan today. It's
I understand. Yeah, I know how much you love the Dallas Cowboys, Ryan. You made that clear. I understand. I get it.
I will say this though. I know we're recording, but thank God for Jimmy Johnson last night. And my blood is like boiling. And I know we're on the record now. He should have been in, and I know I speak for every Dallas Cowboy fan in the world. He should have been in the Hall of Fame. He should have been the Ring of Honor, like 15 years ago. And I will say this because I love the history of the league. I don't expletive on the early 90s teams that won and Drew Pearson, South River, New Jersey High School, where my parents went. So my mom loves the Pearson family. But when he said how about them Cowboys, as a fan of the NFL and of how good those early 90 teams were, oh God, it was cool.
Oh, so good.
Oh, the curse is broken too. Now that he's in the Ring of Honor, finally.
Yeah, one quick comment on that because I've been a Cowboy fan since '70 now. The reason he wasn't in, I think we all know that, was Jerry Jones' ego. He just couldn't bring himself because he didn't want Jimmy to get all the credit, and he proved that by saying any one of 50 coaches could have coached the Cowboys to the Super Bowl, then hiring Barry Switzer off the couch, who had no idea about the NFL at all and really didn't even want to coach. And ever since then, the franchise hasn't won a darn thing since then. So that's just my outtake and look, good victory last night with Dallas. They're, having a good season, but in 27 years of failing, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I hate to say that. I hate to say it because I've seen it so many times in the past, but I am old. So I did see him win 5. I did. I may not see another one in my lifetime. I'm hoping I do. So snake of the week for me.
I steal it from Jim Rome, old Jera. But God bless Jessica Simpson and God bless Jera giving out 2 tickets to the NFC title game because next to my child, the greatest day of my life, which is sad. Sunday, January 13th, 2008. Oh, we're going to the NFC title game and we're going to beat the Packers. Yeah. Over my head. Brandon Jacobs. And I don't really care anymore. Like the last time I kind of gave a crap was the Mets in the World Series in 2015. But when Brandon Jacobs scored that go-ahead touchdown with 15 minutes, like with 14 minutes, mind you, to go in the fourth quarter, and running and throwing the ball at the play cock and blowing out some lights. Oh, shit, another chef's kiss. Anyway, God, we sound like we're undisputed or first take. We're talking about the Cowboys when it's Lobo basketball. Anyway, go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway, I got more comments about that, but I'll leave that one alone. Snake of the week was Nelly, for me, Nelly Jr. Joseph, 16 points, 15 rebounds, starting to find his way as a low post threat. Like Coach Pitino says, the game slows down once in a while. Once in a while, we need to throw it in there and be able to count on some points. And as I mentioned, I think we haven't seen the best of him, and I think we're going to see much more of that in conference play. So that's my snake of the week. Mackenzie, I'll go to you.
My snake of the week, I have to pick a person. Otherwise, I would pick the college football playoff and the transfer portal and the bowl season because it's the game yesterday, the Orange Bowl, was just, it was comical. But my snake of the week, it's crazy. We haven't really even talked about him, but he had 22 points. He fueled a huge run for the Lobos, 20-0 run in the first half. But Jalen House, and I think if you want to talk about the most important player coming up on Tuesday's game, it's number 10. What he does defensively against Isaiah Stevens and what he does offensively for us, I think could be very well the difference in the game. So Jalen House, my man.
Erik.
Braden. I'm going with Braden Applehands. 14 points, 4 of 6 from 3-point land in just under 20 minutes. I thought he kind of coming into his own now. I think he just needs more minutes on the floor. And then I think we touched on it a little bit. I think there's going to come a point later in conference season where we're going to need someone to come in and make some shots, and that guy might be Braden. He's finding his own and finding his rhythm, getting a little bit more confidence. My guy's got a BA. Is that what you guys call him, Mackenzie? BA?
BA.
BA. All right.
Big ass or Bachelor of Arts. Sorry, it's bad sense of humor. Hey, you know what I wanted to touch on, and we need to talk about them more, is the UNM women's basketball team. I don't know. I never wrote in the Daily Lobo. We could never refer to them as the Lady Lobos. I always still refer to them as the Lady Lobos when I talk. But Mike Bradbury and co. Hey, we'll give
And
them.
this is a snake of the week, bro.
I would. Every time I play that, I think about my child and how I don't want to stay near my child. I'm sorry. The Lady Lobos open conference, but my sense of humor is terrible. Peter Venkman from Ghostbusters. The Lobos open conference play with a 69-59 win over Nevada on Saturday. UNM led for nearly the entire game. So, hey, they're 1-0 in conference play, so good for them. We need to get JJ or somebody from the women's team onto the podcast. I think they're going to be a tough out in conference play, and I think they're going to be in the thick of things heading towards, March and UNLV. I forgive me. I watch a lot of sports, and I don't keep up on women's basketball like I should. I know LSU is good. I know Caitlin Clark's good. I know I've seen some upsets, but kudos to them getting their first win. Mackenzie Bishop from Abrazo Homes. Hey, we want to appreciate you for joining us on this podcast. Usually we've got it more together. With the holidays and me being sick, I apologize for that, but I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was great.
We appreciate it. All right. Erik Malton, my business partner in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again, Mackenzie.
And the Lobo fan since 1970, the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, Mr. Ed Nunez, Senor. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great discussion.
And joining us next will be Kevin Lytle from the Coloradoan. If I could talk today, Fort Collins, Coloradoan. That's like one of the harder words for me to say. He will join us. He covers Colorado State athletics. He will be joining us in a moment to break down this game and the start to Colorado State's fantastic season. All right, welcome back to the Pit Press Podcast. I'm flying solo on this episode. Ryan Tamori here. Happy to be joined by this guy. I haven't talked to him in a while, and just somebody else that I've met covering the Lobos in the Mountain West Conference. He covers, I hope I got this right, Kevin, so if I've got it wrong, please correct me. He covers Colorado State athletics for the Fort Collins Coloradoan. His name is Kevin Lytle. Hey, man, happy holidays and happy New Year. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks so much for having me on. Good to catch up with you again. How are things going down to Albuquerque?
Other than whatever I've had illness-wise the last 2 weeks. I've been sick the last 2 Christmases. So,
oh, no.
It really sucks. And I'm starting to finally feel myself. And I usually am like an early riser, and this morning was not, so I'm running behind schedule. So I really appreciate you joining us. But yeah, it's great to catch up. Man, you've probably, for somebody who's covered Colorado State, you've probably had an entertaining year, even with Colorado up in Fort Collins, especially with everything that's gone on with that game. But I'll keep this conversation college basketball wise. Mountain West Conference play starts this week for teams, and UNM heads up to Fort Collins to take on at the moment, the number 15 ranked Rams in Moby Arena. That game is on Fox Sports 1, 8:30 tip Mountain Time on Tuesday night. What a great way to start conference play. What a great way to start the year. Kevin, just your overall thoughts. Did you see this team here come the end of October?
Probably not to this level, no. I thought this was going to be a much improved Colorado State. I thought, just from seeing them in summer and preseason, workouts and stuff, that it was a team that, maybe had a chance to be a tournament team. You knew Isaiah Stevens, with what he does, that brings a level of quality right off the bat. But the new pieces, they're unknown certainly on how it all fit together. Obviously, last year was so disappointing for CSU, coming off the tournament the year prior, and basically everything went wrong, injuries, all sorts of stuff. So nothing went right. But I'd also be sitting here lying if I said that, I thought CSU would be 12-1 and ranked 15th in the nation. I thought it'd be a good team, maybe not to this level, though.
What Isaiah Stevens brings, and I'm probably, some people will probably tell me I'm wrong. I mean, I think he's probably a second-round NBA draft pick, maybe borderline first round, depending on where he's sitting in the kind of year that he has down the stretch. Not only how important is he to Niko Medved and his squad, but how important is he to this team? I know it's a cliche question, but how important is he to this team? And how good of a point guard is he nationally?
Yeah, he's everything. Not, it's not a discredit to anyone else on the roster, but he is absolutely the straw that stirs the drink. Everything starts and ends with him on and off the court. I mean, obviously everyone sees what he does on the court, how he just orchestrates a game, basically bends a game to his will with, determining the pace and play and everything. But off the court too, I mean, he is the absolute leader in that locker room, sets the tone in practices. I mean, I've been at practices where the energy level is lulling a little bit, and he will snap it into action and get that thing going again. He's that guy. Everyone follows him, respects him, and likes him too. He's not a feared leader. He's a loved, respected leader. So he absolutely is, the beacon for this program. It's a conversation for another day, but I think he'll probably leave as, widely considered the best player in program history. And then nationally, I mean, Niko Medved keeps saying it. Obviously Niko is quite biased, but he says, if there's another guard playing this good, show me, because I haven't seen him. Greg McDermott, Creighton coach, basically said the same thing after Stevens and co basically walloped Creighton out in Kansas City. He said, that's one of the best guards in the game, and he just took over, and we had no answer for what he could do. So, pretty much every coach you talk to says roughly the same thing of, he's one of the best. So, obviously there are many really good guards, in the league and across the country, but Stevens is absolutely in that top tier.
As far as their schedule goes, and I thought this was a buddy of mine who went to Seton Hall brought it up because of Creighton in the Big East. Creighton's only lost 2 games, and they were Colorado State and UNLV. Yep. But when you look at this non-conference schedule, they've beaten Boston College. They shellacked at the time number 8 Creighton. Excuse me, sound like Elmer Fudd there, or Bugs Bunny. Then they get wins against Colorado, who's a pretty good Colorado team. Nobody's a slouch from the Pac-12 with Washington. And they just kind of, they were close wins, but you get that momentum and you going. And it's very funny that they beat, they lost to St. Mary's. But this non-conference schedule for them, this stacks up really well for them come maybe the end of February and the end of March, right? Or excuse me, beginning of March.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, Medved was saying the other night, he goes, the good thing when you're talking tournament is your wins in November count the same as your wins in February. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do, but they have a really nice resume. That Creighton win, even though Creighton's faltered a little bit, that's still going to shine. Those metrics are going to be really good. Boston College so far is helping. They've been, pretty good. Colorado is absolutely an NCAA tournament team as well, so that win will continue to look nice. Washington, I think it was like a week after CSU beat Washington then went and beat Gonzaga. So that one looks nice. And then there's some other ones that just provide depth. Louisiana Tech is a pretty solid win. Even a Wright State's not a bad one. So, the St. Mary's loss was disappointing. It wasn't a surprise. The gauntlet, they had basically the 6 games in like 13-day stretch, and they had a bunch of injuries in there, and it all kind of caught up to them. But, St. Mary's, even though it's not vintage, that's not going to end up being a bad metric loss either. So overall, I mean, this record, if you had told Medved before, like, hey, you're going to take a St. Mary's loss, but you'll trade in wins over Boston College, Creighton, Washington, Colorado, Medved would have taken that in a heartbeat. So yeah, it's a really, really solid schedule. They really put themselves out there. And and they schedule aggressively. Last year the season went badly, but if you look at the non-con, if CSU had been good, it's an NCAA tournament schedule. They just didn't win games. It's a thing Medved is kind of becoming known for, is he schedules really aggressively.
Before I was going to ask you about the depth, and you wrote an article before they beat Adams State on Friday night about the depth and how these teams have gelled. How good of a coach? He was a pleasure to talk to. He seems even kill. He's very, very laid back. At least that's, that's based off a 15, 20-minute conversation. But how good of a coach is Niko Medved, and what's the feeling you get from him as being maybe a player's coach? Because that's this is an assumption, but I'll throw that question your way. How good of a coach he is, though?
Yeah, I think he's an excellent coach. You look offensively, point scoring, the systems they run are really advanced as far as just creating ball movement and scoring opportunities. And you even look at a team like last year for CSU that wasn't very good, and the offensive numbers were still pretty good. It kind of tells you what that system is. And yeah, I think you're seeing growth on the coaching side too every year on how to best put this thing together. And yeah, there's a reason you're going to be seeing Niko Medved's name all over potential power school coaching hires this offseason, because he's going to be a hot commodity, especially if this CSU team goes and finishes first or second in the Mountain West. That would probably be a 4 seed type of team. That will get you a lot of attention. So yeah, I think he's a really good coach. I think you're definitely right. Players coach, players like him. I think one thing that does get lost is because he is so friendly and open to talking to people. That's kind of the vibe he gives off, and it's accurate. That is who he is, but it kind of hides the killer in him. And you see that in practices sometimes. You can see it in private conversations of this team and this staff. They are driven to win. Obviously everyone at this level is, so that's not a unique thing, but it kind of gets hidden, I think, in the friendliness is you can almost think, they're a cool, fun program, but what happens in the toughest moments, they're ready. He's a great coach. I think he will be a hot commodity. It'll be interesting off season to see the maneuvers everyone makes on both sides of this thing, but definitely a high level coach.
Can you talk about the depth on this Colorado State team? It's something that's been made a point here. UNM really didn't have a lot of depth last year, and I think that's why they faltered. And then you look at, and I'm sure it's still going to be talked about this year, you look at what San Diego State did last year. They had depth. Talk about the depth on this Colorado State team.
Yeah, it's been, that was a huge point in the offseason. It was kind of the same thing of, behind Stevens last year, there wasn't enough. And there were a lot of reasons for that part of it. David Roddy, that draft decision came so late that it was hard to build that, the roster after that. But there's a ton of depth now. CSU, despite the record and the schedule, it's been a tough non-conference. They had Patrick Cartier, the big man, missed basically 2 games with a bad back. Jalen Lake broke a finger, missed about a month of action. Josiah Strong, a starting shooting guard, is still out. He's been out probably 3 or 4 weeks at this point. So they've had a lot of injuries. They've had to deal with that. And obviously, you look at the record they have. I think the one time that did show is in the St. Mary's game where they really missed those guards. But that depth has proved key. A guy like Kyle Evans, a big man that doesn't play very much, has come in, had some really big games and big moments. A guy you guys are familiar with, Javonte Johnson, is pretty much number 12, I would say, 11 or 12 on the depth chart, but he's had to come in and make some plays. I think especially that Creighton game, he had a couple moments where he had to show up and did. So just a lot of different pieces that, like you say, you assume will bode well, because, hoping that everything goes smooth as far as injuries and performance and foul trouble and all that through this 18-game gauntlet, it's just not going to happen. So you're going to need everyone. And yeah, a lot of guys that play a lot of minutes. And those guard injuries, CSU's had to use a sophomore who missed a lot of time last year and this year, and then a true freshman playing a lot of time at the guard. And so they've got a ton of minutes here early on, which you figure will only help down the road.
The newcomers, Nikkei Clifford and Joel Scott. Joel Scott's the impact that these guys have had. I mean, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'll start with Joel Scott. He's what CSU needed on the inside. Patrick Cartier is a really good scoring big, not great as far as rebounding, and he's okay defensively, but not superb there. Joel Scott comes in. He's kind of just a big bear of a guy. He can defend it well inside, helps with the rebounding. And you don't need him to score a ton, but he scored well. He's solid around the paint. He can hit a three every now and then. And most important for this offense, him and Cartier are both good passing bigs, which really helps in space the floor. So yeah, Scott has just been exactly what they needed. And again, another veteran guy. If you look up and down this roster, it is old. It is supremely old for the college level. This is his 5th year, Isaiah Stevens' 5th year, Nick Clifford's 4th year. So you have a lot of guys playing a lot of minutes that have played a lot of minutes for a long time. And then, yeah, Clifford coming over from rival Colorado is a fun one, of course, interesting one. And again, he's a piece CSU hasn't had, is that really long athletic wing that can really flourish with, Stevens running the point. I think it's worked on both sides. Clifford, he had moments at Colorado, but didn't flourish. And it's an offensive system that's not really built for a guy like him. And Colorado tends to have ball dominant point guards. Whereas here, Stevens is always looking for the pass. So he's really flourished there. Aggressive rebounder. He's been scoring efficiently, not trying to do too much. He's really just played within the offense and seems really comfortable. So those two just have been, again, that's where you credit the staff of, we can all watch players and be like, oh, that's a nice player, but knowing how to fit them all on your roster, they did a masterful job there with Scott and Clifford.
I mean, you talk about when you hear, and we're joined by Kevin Lytle of the Colorado and previewing UNM at CSU on Tuesday. You talk about other arenas in the league, and I think when people, at least around the conference, talk about it, it's Viejas, it's the Pit, and I'm not trying to be biased here. Moby's a hard place to play. My question to you is, what has Moby turned into in this non-conference? Has it been a hard place to play?
Yeah, I agree with you. Though, I think those places you named are rightfully sort of your top tier, but I think there are a lot of great arenas in this league. I think Moby is absolutely one of them right now. It's been electric. A couple sellouts already. Colorado and St. Mary's, I want to say. And the good thing that you're seeing now is, right now, obviously, it's students are on break. On whatever Friday night it was, they played Adams State, a Division II. It's basically an exhibition, and it was almost full for that game on basically a meaningless night right in the middle of the holidays with students on break. So it's become really good. The student energy has been great when they're in. This is going to be, assuming it keeps tracking this way, the best attended CSU men's basketball season since like 1991, I believe. So it's been really good. It's going to be full the rest of the season. It'll be sellouts, especially when students are back. The drive to get those tickets is going to be really high. So it's been a really good environment. It's a tight, smaller arena where the noise just goes straight down onto the floor. So it is definitely, I think, a very tough place to play. I've been fortunate to be in a lot of arenas, and Loud Moby is right up there with a lot of places I've been.
I with them being 15th, I was like, oh, Moby is going to be, I don't know. I feel like somebody's, covers the conference and knows it. Like it's going to be, it's underappreciated. So I'm trying to remain objective. It scares me. What do you expect? I mean, I think that this is a great way for the conference as a whole to start off. This is a great way for these two programs to start off conference play. What do you expect Tuesday night out of this game?
Yeah, I agree. It's a great starter, and God, the league is so good. You look for Colorado State specifically, you start home New Mexico, at Utah State, at Boise State. There's a team that's ranked number 15, and they could go 0-3 in those games. And I'm not sure anyone would look at any of them as, necessarily bad losses, because that's how good the league is. Obviously, you do not want to do that. That is far from the plan for CSU, but this is a really fun matchup. I'm super intrigued by how it goes. New Mexico, that guard play is obviously really good, really fascinating. I'm intrigued at how that trio is going to work together. Toppin in the middle. I'm going to assume him and Scott will be banging together, which is going to be quite a battle. So that's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a great game. And I do think it's one CSU needs to win. You have to, I don't think anyone's going to go undefeated at home just because the league is so good. Someone's going to get you, but you need to protect your home court pretty well if you want to be at the top of this thing. So I think CSU needs to start this one well, especially given the next couple games. But I think it's going to be a really tight game. CSU has played New Mexico well at home the last few years. I think that will continue, but I think New Mexico is going to be ready for this one. I would be surprised if it's not decided in the final 4 minutes or so.
You had mentioned that you know what you know about the UNM guards. What do you know about New Mexico just heading into this game, and what maybe might be? I hope I'm not asking the same question again, but what might be a problem for Colorado State?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that guard play, those guys, when one or two of them get going, it can be problematic for everyone. And like I said, CSU, their best two perimeter defenders in Jalen Lake and Josiah Strong had been hurt. Jalen Lake came back last game, so that helps a lot. They're going to need him. But Josiah Strong is still out. So that's to me, maybe the biggest worry for CSU is just if those guys really get going. The game, I forget if it was the first game Amman West played last year. I believe they played at the Pit. It was really early. I remember it was early on. And Jalen House just went off.
It was the first. How I remember this, I don't know. It was the first game of conference play last year. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah. So, House went off in that one. Well, basically everyone went off. I think New Mexico put up at like 90. It was pretty lopsided. So you can't have those guys really get cooking early. And, on the flip side, Isaiah Stevens is going to want to dictate pace and play of this thing, and he's been pretty good at that. But yeah, I think it's mostly just for CSU. We've seen that when they play at their level, they obviously can beat basically anyone. So, not to do coach cliche of play your own game, but in a lot of ways, I think that's what it is. And it'll be interesting. New Mexico, I know there's been a lot of chatter down there about the schedule and everything, and it's not the worst schedule anyone's ever put together, but I think probably everyone there would admit it's not the best either. So it'll be interesting to see, how New Mexico handles, this, pretty significant road test to start league play too. So just a lot of fascinating factors in this one.
I'm one of the naysayers on the schedule, but it's hard to get somebody to come play to the Pit.
It's tough. I mean, I get both sides. I'll admit when I looked at the schedule, I said, what the heck is New Mexico doing? You've got all these guys back. You should be really good, and you don't have many resume chances, which I still think is true. But I do also understand. I mean, no one's going to sign up to play in the Pit. I obviously don't know the ins and outs of in exactly what MTs they can get in and which neutral site games they can do. CSU has started leaning into these Pac-10 or Pac-12 games, whatever it's going to be called in the future. In neutral sites, they played USC in Vegas last year, Washington, Vegas this year, to try and boost some of that. But scheduling is hard right now. I'll concede that, but definitely I was surprised by New Mexico's schedule.
He is a writer from the Coloradoan. He attended CSU, and then I love your bio. He still plays soccer and hockey and still says he's not great at them, and that you sound like me. I'm not the second baseman I was 25 years ago. Anyway, Kevin Lytle from the Coloradoan. Again, he covers Colorado sports up there. Hey, man, happy holidays. Happy New Year. I want to thank you for spending 20 minutes with me on New Year's Eve to preview this game. Enjoy the game, and I'll reach out probably and hope to talk to you when Colorado State comes down to Albuquerque.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that one. Always enjoy a trip down to the Pit too, down the road. So that'll be fun. And thanks for having me on. I cannot wait for Mountain West play. This is going to be a lot of fun.
That makes two of us and the rest of Albuquerque. Hey, I appreciate it.
You bet.